Good morning and welcome to Beacon Academy's Remembrance event. My name is Izzy and as a member of the student leadership team it is my honour to open today's ceremony on behalf of our school. At this time of year, many of us choose to donate money towards war charities and wear a red poppy. The poppy is a symbol of remembrance, hope for a peaceful future, and it shows support for the armed forces community. I invite you now to join us to reflect on wars that have passed and those that are current, as we remember the many who have given their lives for the liberty and freedom of others. I will now hand over to history teacher Mrs. Brand.
Good morning, my name is Mrs. Brand. I'm a history teacher here at Beacon Academy. I've been asked to speak to you today about remembrance and what we remember during this week and why it's important. Traditionally, we remember the soldiers who fought in the First and Second World Wars and the past 2 centuries, some of whom made the ultimate sacrifice and gave their lives so that we can have the freedoms that we have today. We remember these people on Armistice Day, the 11th of November, the day the guns fell silent during the First World War. Much of the fighting of the First World War took place in France and Belgium. Scattered across both countries are Commonwealth war graves which contain the graves of those who lost their lives in both the First and Second World Wars. I have visited these sites many times on school trips. A place of great importance is the Menin Gate. This is in a town called Ypres in Belgium and contains the names of those who were missing and never found during the First World War. They hold a service every evening to remember those who lost their lives, all 54,000. Every time I have visited with students, they will find someone with the same surname as them, or on the headstone of a grave in the beautifully maintained cemeteries. This shows us that we all have connection to war, and I'm sure that if you look at your own family history, you will find someone who was involved in some war or conflict. My own grandfather fought in the RAF during World War II. Sadly, I never met him as he died a couple of months before I was born. He was an in-flight engineer on the Lancaster bombers and took 28 trips to drop bombs on German cities. He would tell my dad they were often more worried about running out of fuel on the way back and were concerned that they wouldn't make it home. Although he wasn't killed during the war, he gave his service and would have lost friends and colleagues during that war. The Royal British Legion, who raised money for the sale of poppies, are remembering and commemorating military and civilian services in 2022. This includes emergency services who have worked to protect us through COVID-19. They want us all to think about who has helped us during the pandemic, who has served. Perhaps you have personal experience of being helped during this time. I personally was brilliantly looked after by the NHS and midwives as I had my daughter during the pandemic. I am forever grateful to those who looked after us and served on the front line. Thinking more recently, you and your family may have served by welcoming Ukrainian family into your home to save them from a war which is happening right now. So this Remembrance Day, if it feels too abstract to remember soldiers fighting 100 years ago, perhaps remember those who served more recently, and perhaps you can reflect on how you can serve in the future.
Thank you very much to Year 11 student and Senior Prefect Izzy for her introduction, and to Mrs. Brand from our History Department for her poignant and reflective presentation about remembrance. Thanks also in advance to our wonderful and inspiring students Amelia, Benjamin, Luca and Natasha, who will also be part of this presentation, and I will be handing over to them after I've spoken to you. My name is Slattery and I'm the very proud head of school at Beacon Academy. I would like to welcome everyone to this Remembrance event, and especially those who are joining us remotely. Whether you're watching from one of our local primary schools, from home, or as part of one of our community groups or organisations. And in particular, I'd like to mention the following: Crowborough and District Veterans and Supporters Associations, Air Cadets 1414 Crowborough Squadron, 1st Crowborough Scout Group, Girl Guiding Crowborough District, All Saints Church, Crowborough Town Council and Sewing Crowbees. We're delighted to be taking part in the Remembrance service for our town on Chapel Green for Armistice Day this morning, and we're really pleased to continue our new tradition for our school and hold a whole school event remotely as well. Remembrance is observed on this day in most countries to recall the hostilities of war, and more recently to acknowledge the service of our frontline workers during the pandemic. It is a chance to keep in mind the courage and sacrifice of those who serve their countries, to pay tribute to the special contribution of families and of the emergency service, and to acknowledge innocent civilians who have lost their lives in conflicts and acts of terrorism. It is also a time to recognise that we have a responsibility to work relentlessly for the peace that they fought so hard to achieve. And following on from Mrs. Brand's inspiring message, it's an opportunity to reflect on not only our personal connection to those who have served, whether in the past or present, but how each of us can serve and continue to make our mark now and in the future. Within our approaching 2-minute silence, it's important to remember that 2 minutes to remember the fallen is never too much to ask. During our tutor time today, we shared a short video clip that was produced by the British Legion. The message from this clip is really clear and a reminder of why giving our time, especially in the 21st century, is just as important as it's ever been. The message is one that I'm going to recap now. Pause. Let's break the silence on the 2-minute silence and pause. You see, it's not about which side of the argument you side with. Think of it as an act of kindness. You may not know their names, you may never meet them face to face, but imagine what it must feel like to never again see the face of your brother, your sister, your parents, or your best friend. Imagine all you had left was the pictures they left on their social media, or a backpack full of their belongings. This is more than some war in your history textbook. You don't have to agree with the politicians, you don't have to like their decisions, but you can decide to empathise. And yes, it can be awkward just standing there, but try this. Try closing your eyes. Remember those who risked their lives knowing every second might be their last. So if we give them a second or 2 minutes, is that really too much to ask? Let that football roll to a stop. Let your conversation reach a full stop. Silence your phone, close the laptop, pause your coffee, switch off the TV. Because when it comes to empathy, we can all stand on the front line. And on the 11th of the 11th at 11 a.m, we can all choose to unite. We need to talk about the silence and then pause, lest we forget this moment is ours. I'm now going to hand over to our wonderful and inspiring students, Amelia, Benjamin and Luca, for a reading of the poem In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. This will be followed by a performance of The Last Post by another of amazing students, Natasha, who is in Year 10. We will then hold our 2-minute silence, during which time an exhibition of Remembrance-inspired artworks by students at Beacon Academy and local primary schools will be displayed, along with information about how to support the Poppy Appeal this year. Our event will conclude at the end of the silence.
In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below.
We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields.
Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field.